Should Donald Trump have the power to take us to war? It's very much not what the Constitution says. Check it out and don't forget to ding the bell, subscribe to our channel, make your comments, and share our channel with your friends. Well, are you ready for war? Donald Trump and Mike Pence apparently are. Pence gave a speech this morning talking about how we are locked and loaded. I guess Trump has updated. Last time around when Trump was tweeting about this, it was that he was cocked and loaded. Now he's locked and loaded. he's figuring out the rhetoric. But I think it's, there's a bunch of kind of issues that are pulling together here at the same time. The first is that the Constitution does not give the President of the United States the right to declare war. And the framers of the Constitution were very, very clear about that declaring war was a kingly power, and they never wanted a president of the United States to have that power. They did not want the guy who was in charge of the military to be able to make a decision about whether or not to use the military. They had seen example after example after example in 1,000 years of European history where the guy who ran the military was also the king, was also the guy who made decisions about using the military and made those decisions stupidly, inappropriately, in ways that would, aggrandize or improve the wealth of himself, things like this. And they said, just no, ain't going to happen. So, Article 1 of the Constitution is quite clear, quite explicit, that only Congress can make war. Only Congress can make those decisions. That's it. Only Congress. And yet, you've got Donald Trump talking like, yeah, maybe we'll go to war. I mean, this should really concern us. And he's not just saying maybe we'll go to war. He's saying, well, we're waiting to hear from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as to who they believe was the cause of this attack and under what terms we would proceed. We? This is on Monday. Trump says, this was during a press gaggle in the Oval Office, Saudi Arabia pays cash. We would certainly help them. They've been a great ally. They spent $400 billion in our country over the last number of years. $400 billion. That's 1.5 million jobs. Well, first of all, they didn't spend $400 billion. And secondly, so what? We do not have a mutual defense treaty with with Saudi Arabia. I mean, we do with Europe. That's what NATO is. NATO is a massive mutual defense. If one of us is attacked, all of us are attacked, and we respond. It's one of the reasons why Russia is so freaked out about NATO countries being on its border. These are absolute mutual defense treaties, but we don't have a treaty like that with Saudi Arabia. There's people who are saying that this attack on Saudi oil fields is Saudi Arabia's 9/11. Which is kind of rich, given that I believe it was 17 of the 19 hijackers who attacked us on 9/11 were Saudis. But Donald Trump goes on and he says, after he says, we would certainly help them. They spend $400 billion in our countries. That's 1.5 million jobs. And then he goes on, which, again, like I said, it's not true, but nonetheless, he's massively overstating how much money Saudi Arabia spends here. But then he goes on to say, this is something that's much different than other presidents would mention. Gee, you think? Like other presidents who actually took civics in high school, who understand that, there's 3 branches of government, who understand how war goes and all these kind of things. He says, nonetheless, the Saudis would be very much involved, and that includes payment. So Trump wants to rent out our military. I mean, if the Saudis want to hire a military, they should talk to Eric Prince. And they may well be doing so. But talking to the President of the United States? No, I don't think so. By the way, because of fracking, by and large, the United States, we had this massive boom in fossil fuels. So much so that up to a couple of years ago, it was against the law for any company in the United States to export crude oil. You could export refined oil. You could export gasoline or diesel fuel or jet fuel or, you know, stuff like that, chemicals. But you could not export raw oil. Why? Because we'd always been an importer of oil. It's why the Arab oil embargo, both of them in the early 70s, early and mid 70s, so damaged our economy. We had 16% inflation because of that. Because when the oil was cut off, the price of oil just exploded because we couldn't produce enough oil here in the United States. So now we're, you know, largely because of fracking, which I'm not real happy about, but this is the simple reality of the situation. We are not only producing enough oil to meet all our needs, we're now exporting oil. They, you know, I believe it was in the first year of the Trump administration. I think it was about 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago. Congress actually changed the law. This is when the Republicans control both the House and Senate and said, yeah, sure, you know. These big oil companies in the United States that are pumping oil, they can export it. Make your money. Knock yourself out. So who buys Saudi Arabia's oil if we're not? I mean, we still are actually still buying some Saudi oil. But we don't need to, number one. Number two, who actually is buying the majority of Saudi oil? China, South Korea, and India. Japan is also a big purchaser. But most of it's going to China and India. Now, China and India are big countries. They have big militaries. China's is the fastest growing military in the world right now. If Saudi Arabia wants somebody to participate with them in a war on Iran, let them talk to China. This is not our fight. Saudi Arabia they are not our friends. They don't share our values. I mean, they have crucified or beheaded over 100 people this year, including people who were arrested as children. They hang women from the ceiling of jail cells if they speak up against, against the oppression of women in Saudi Arabia. You know, these feminist activists. The rights of women in Saudi Arabia are massively truncated. They're beheading people for pot. I mean, it's Osama bin Laden said that the reason he was going to attack America, this was 2 years before, this was in 1998 or 1999. New York Times reported on this, that Osama bin Laden had said that he was thinking of attacking the United States because the U.S. had an air base in Saudi Arabia. This is the legacy of Elder Bush's war. Elder Bush wanted to have a war in order to get himself reelected. He became president in 1980, the election of 88. He became president in 89 when Reagan faded into Alzheimer's. But then he was up for re-election in 92, and he thought, hey, you know, I'll have a little war. War is always a good thing. And in order to have his little war in Iraq, and you know this whole thing was kind of set up, right? April Gillespie, I think her name was, the person in the State Department that Saddam Hussein came to and said, you know, hey, they are slant drilling. The Kuwaitis are slant drilling underneath my country and stealing my oil, and I would like to attack them for that. I would like to reclaim them. After all, Kuwait used to be part of Iraq. Used to be like the 54th district or something like that. And April Gillespie was like, well, you know, it's not our issue. And Saddam Hussein thought that was a green light, and boom, in he goes. And George Herbert Walker Bush says, oh boy, here's my little war. This will get me reelected. But in order to have that war, he had to have an Air Force base in Saudi Arabia that he could stage, you know, from which planes could fly and bomb the bejesus out of Baghdad. So they built an Air Force base. And this Air Force base is why Osama bin Laden told us he was going to attack us. Because it was on the holy soil of Saudi Arabia. There were men watching pornography and drinking alcohol and listening to music. There were women who were showing their elbows and driving cars. And so he was going to attack the United States. I don't think most Americans know why bin Laden attacked the United States, but he told us in advance. And he was a Saudi. And he was an adherent of Saudi Wahhabism, of the Wahhabi sect of Sunni Islam, which Saudi Arabia to this day is promoting all over the world, which is which contains the religious and philosophical underpinnings of both Al-Qaeda and ISIS. These are Sunni Wahhabist movements, or have derived from them. So here we have a country with whom we have no mutual defense treaty, Saudi Arabia, whose people participated in a massive attack on the United States. And in response to that, we did not attack Saudi Arabia. We attacked Afghanistan and Iraq, which had nothing to do with this, which, turned Dick Cheney into a multi-millionaire. And I'm sure helped out George W. Bush and his family, too, and got George W. Bush reelected, which was his whole point that he told Mickey Herskowitz just before the election. But anyhow, here we have this situation where this country that we have no mutual defense treaty with may well be telling Donald Trump, he says, we're going to wait to hear from Saudi Arabia what we should do. So this brutal prince who executes people arrested as children and dissidents and beheads them or crucifies them is going to tell us. Now, our Constitution says Congress tells us when we go to war and to whom we go to war against. But I think it's really important that right now we all be calling our members of Congress at 202-225-3121. You have 2 senators and 1 member of the House of Representatives, unless you live in D.C. or Puerto Rico, but you get the point. Call now and say, no, we don't want another war. What are your thoughts on this? How we should be responding to this? What we should do? And let me also give you some history on the Yemen conflict.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll dig into the war that Saudi Arabia is fighting right now in Yemen, which is what provoked this attack on Saudi Arabia.